Ambassador, let's begin on the US administration's play into the region. As you've heard there, no shortage of issues that make it critical for the administration to firm up ties with Saudi Arabia and, of course, firm up ties with Israel as well. But why do you think this visit by the Biden administration was cancelled or postponed? What's happened here?
Originally, President Biden was planning to visit at the end of June. And as the White House looked at the overall schedule, the Middle East part of the visit was on the front end, and on the back end were two important summits in Europe, the G7 summit in Germany, followed by the NATO summit in Madrid. And it just was too much for one trip. He would have been gone from the United States for over 10 days, which is a lot of time with so much going on at home. They've simply separated it into two trips, and he will be coming to the Middle East in the middle of July, it appears. And it's really important that he does come. These relationships with Israel, with key Gulf partners like the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, are critical to United States interests. And while the Biden administration has correctly spent its first year plus really focused on shoring up key alliances in Asia with the standing up of the Quad to help balance China, with revitalizing the NATO alliance and then rallying it to respond to Russia's unjustified invasion of Ukraine. It's clear that the Middle East is also a region where the United States has major interests, major partners who need some assurances, and also we need to count on to contribute to helping aligning their policies to help the United States address its challenges, including those from China and Russia in the Middle East.
And speaking of firming up critical alliances, we also know the Biden administration has been making a play to improve diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Where do we stand, in your view, on that normalization?
Israel, of course, signed normalization agreements with 4 Arab countries, the United States, Morocco, Bahrain, and Sudan in 2020. Probably those agreements would not have been signed without at least some signal of support from Saudi Arabia. It's clear that the new Saudi leadership, the young Saudi leadership, is moving in this direction. The trajectory is clear. They no longer see Israel as an enemy, but rather as a potential partner, really a partner, actually, against common threats like Iran, like the proxy terrorist organizations that Iran sponsors. And they want to do business with Israel. They want to do common security operations and intelligence gathering with Israel, much of that coordinated with the United States under our CENTCOM military leadership in the region. So this is an important opportunity for the Saudis to, in the context of a visit by President Biden, to take a step forward. I don't expect they're going to formally normalize relations with Israel on this visit, but there's discussions around a very significant step forward, perhaps by the Saudi Arabia reclaiming sovereignty over 2 islands in the Red Sea that control the Straits of Tiran, so that Israel would have confidence that it could continue to have freedom of navigation in those waters. And in exchange, Saudi Arabia might allow Israeli aircraft, civilian aircraft, to overfly Saudi territory. Those would be 2 pretty significant steps in the direction of normalization. President Biden and his team have been working on this. They do see this as a U.S. interest to continue to strengthen and coalesce a coalition of like-minded, moderate U.S. partners in the region to support each other, to support each other's security and economic development needs with the U.S. as a partner. So this is a good opportunity to take a step forward there.
It's also really fascinating to kind of listen in to some of your commentary. You're sounding much more optimistic on that pathway to normalization, but I kind of get the sense that we could be a long way off that Bennett-Biden MBS photo op that the administration could perhaps be looking for here. But I digress. On another issue, Ambassador, what we've seen is this evolving political crisis in Israel, and I wanted you to weigh in on this as well. The settlement bill that failed to pass on Monday usually always passes. So do you think the fragile coalition in Israel is on the brink of collapse now? What's happening here?
It's always been a difficult coalition to hold together. This is a very narrow coalition. It had originally a bare majority of 61 seats and 120-seat Knesset. They lost one of those members, so they're really a minority coalition now. It's incredibly diverse, parties from the far left to the far right, and for the first time, an Arab party in the coalition as well. So it was always going to be difficult to hold this coalition together for an extended period of time. And this bill that failed to pass earlier in the week is an example of that. They may have another shot at it, but one of the things that unified this coalition to begin with, the reason they came together was because they all agreed on one thing, which is they felt that Israel needed some political change. They felt that former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had been in office too long. They all agreed that it was better that Israel take a new direction. And since he is still the opposition leader and the most likely beneficiary of any collapse of the coalition, they may find that they can rally to hang on a bit longer rather than have the coalition fall and have him reap the benefits. But it's going to be hard to sustain. I think they can probably hold on through the Biden visit in mid-July, maybe through the summer. But there's a high likelihood of an election in Israel sometime in the next 6 to 9 months.
Okay, interesting to watch. Ambassador, just before I let you go, I need to get your reaction and also ask you about the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh. Would you support a US investigation to independently determine who killed that journalist? It seems as if this would be the only way to put this matter beyond dispute, given the ongoing conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, who obviously have very differing views on what's happened here.
Certainly an investigation into the circumstances of her tragic death is very warranted. The United States always should care about journalists being caught in the crossfire or the harm's way of military conflict. She, of course, was also a U.S. citizen, and so we have an extra obligation to try to determine the circumstances of her death. It would be necessary, of course, for Israel and the Palestinian Authority to cooperate on that investigation and cooperate probably with the United States. So it would be helpful. Sometimes these things happen tragically. Obviously, if anybody is liable for any intentional attempt to kill her, which I'm not sure there's any evidence of, but if that's the case, that should be taken into account. But yes, an appropriate investigation that all parties cooperate on and contribute to would be an appropriate step.